This is Unit 6, Informative Speech. Here are my judges. Let's get started. I once had to give a speech, and unfortunately I had about one article to go off of for a source. And unfortunately it was about North Korea, and I had to think of something to find that was either credible or something that would be able to make a speech off of. I found one foreign affairs article and went off the speech just on that. Probably one of the best speeches I ever gave, exactly, but it was absolutely improvised the entire time. Now the problem about this is some people are, in a way, good at improvising in general. Now, we're talking specifically about winging it, and winging it in specifics about how people are actually good at it and how people are actually bad at it or don't necessarily prefer it. Now, where the winging itself word comes from is actually came from the root word of, or came from the logistics of theater in general. If an actor was in the certain wings of the stages, that is where they called for the wings. And if he was called to become down on stage, all of a sudden, while he was practicing his lines, people call that winging it, because he was in the wings and he was caught off guard and he had to go off of ad-libbing or improvising or winging it, as we say, off the bat. Now, this is what winging it means. But we're going to be getting into three main points about winging it, how it's actually good and how it actually, what the key root or the key in unlocking winging or improvising includes. And then finally, we'll be looking at about personalities of which ones are good, which ones aren't. But moving on to my first point of the actual concept of winging itself. We can see from CNBC that about 75% of people actually wing it when it comes to financial future, meaning they don't actually look for financial advice in general. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be a good thing in the future, but today we're going to be talking about public speaking in general, about winging it when it comes to public speaking. A Forbes article tells us in October 25th, 2016, of the debate between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. This is the presidential debate, and Hillary Clinton came prepared for all the speeches all the evidence and articles that she was going to present of the certain issues they were going to talk about. And Trump said, as I quoted here, Trump even announced before the first debate he didn't want to prep too much because he was better at winging it. Some people are actually better than other people at winging it. Just so happens that when I was giving that speech, as I said in my intro, it just so happened that I was able to pull it off. I wasn't necessarily comfortable with it, but it just sort of worked out that way. Now, however, this is the main point about winging it, of what is actually the root of that. That leads me to my second point of confidence. Confidence in general makes a big toll on all of us. Another Forbes article from October 17th of 2017 said that many of my clients suffer from a lack of confidence and they are highly educated and talented women, but at some point in their lives allowed their negative feedback or situations to undermine their self-esteem, and that has continued to affect their performance of a successful day. Now, this is what confidence is when it's on the reverse side of the lack of confidence, of what actually happens to people when they don't have enough confidence going into certain situations. Unfortunately, people can get the mindset that they're not actually worth it. They're not worth giving some sort of statement out there because they feel like they're going to be wrong, and therefore they won't give it at all. That's why sometimes you'll find when you don't really have a lot of confidence, when you're asking someone, a speaker, a question, and you just refuse to ask it, and you just don't feel like you're going to be right when you ask the question because you feel like you're going to be wrong, and then someone else asks that exact same question, and you thought, well, if they did it, then I must have been right, but it's kind of too late now. Some people get too wound up in their head about this certain subject in general. Just the lack of confidence and how that really affects their life in general. There's no confidence in a job interview, you're probably not going to get the job. But if there is confidence in a job interview, then obviously you become a higher applicant for that job. However, we've looked at the negative parts of confidence. Let's look at the actual positive parts. We can see from a separate Forbes article on April 1st, 2015, that they point out 12 different aspects of true confidence in certain people and how it's actually different. I wrote down 5 different parts, or 5 of those 12, which I thought that stood out to me. First, they said that they speak with certainty, and then they exercise. They aren't afraid to be wrong, they stick out their neck, and they aren't afraid to ask for help. These are the 5, or I thought, of the 12, very, very important to know. Specifically, when you have confidence in general. You have to know, obviously, what you're talking about, but you have to be certain. You have to exercise that, make it a practice. You have to practice that every day so you become better at it in the future. Obviously, you don't really want to be wrong, but again, with confidence, you're not really scared of being wrong. In some ways, you kind of want to be wrong, so they'll build your confidence for the next time that you do any kind of public speaking. You also want to stick your neck out there. It's probably one of the hardest things to do. And then lastly, you aren't afraid to ask for help. Probably one of the most valuable things I personally value when it comes to confidence, for somebody to have the humility to stick out a hand and ask for somebody else. Finally, let's look at the personalities. Now, we've talked a little bit about what winging it looks like. We've got a definition, pros and cons of confidence, which is the root of how to wing it. But again, with the personalities, you may say, John, I'm not really into this. I have a totally different personality. I hate winging it. I really like notes. Well, don't worry, because we can see from a website of the personal growth that we did a little bit of statistics and running stats that about half of them didn't really like winging it and weren't the fondest of winging it in general. But a little bit over 50% actually loved it or didn't really mind it. But that gave a little gray area, and about 3/8 was about 37.5% actually are capable. Now, capable, let me get you that word. That word means that you are actually able to have confidence. There's that word, confidence. That ties in because now you are capable. We've seen of the word, of how the definition of that, where that is. You have to think on the spot. We've seen that it's not for some people, but it is for others. And then finally, we saw that the confidence is the key to it, and that certain personalities are able to come to be able to reach that standard in winging it. Thank you.